Introduce Mr. Johnny John, who is the Executive Chairman of Protective Life. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad you did introduce me, because I'm sure everyone out there was wondering which of the two guys up there is a dynamic, young, attractive, which one is the old, stodgy, near-retirement CEO. So we resolved that mystery. Now you know that I'm that guy. I'll also say I've had the privilege of knowing Mayor Woodfin for a long time, even going back to before he was elected to any office. We just naturally became friends, and I've consistently given the mayor great political advice. Every time he's come to me and said, I'm thinking about doing this in politics, I'm thinking about it, I've consistently encouraged him by saying, don't. I'm a smart, fine young man like you want to get involved in politics. And he's very wisely ignored my advice at every stage of the game. Look where he is now. But seriously, on behalf of all of my colleagues at Protective Life, and there are 1,800 of us who live here in the greater Birmingham area, and there's another 1,200 that live in other parts of the country. We would like to warmly welcome you to our campus tonight for a very stimulating and interesting conversation, and actually a report from Mayor Woodfin on the state of the city. You know, it's an opportunity for the mayor to explain to you and to all of us, you know, what his priorities are, what his vision is, particularly focused on revitalization of our neighborhoods, empowering our grassroots level neighborhood leadership, and what we can all do collectively to move this great city forward. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to Mayor Woodfin for his comments, please.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm happy to be here. There's some faces in this room I recognize, and there's some faces actually that I've never met before or seen before. So anytime I have an opportunity to be in a atmosphere like this with a friend, I consider Johnny an actual friend, not just a CEO to CEO, but a genuine person who I actually have got a chance to know and develop a rapport with. It's good we can actually have a conversation as friends in front of you all. There's some faces I want to recognize, and those are some city employees who I define as my team members who are present. I want to publicly state to you all, thank you all for everything you do on behalf of the city of Birmingham. And then to the folk in this room who are part of what I call the philanthropic community, make up the foundations, nonprofits, civic organizations, possible some faith-based organizations. Collectively, you all are part of what I call one of the three-legged stools or stands that make this city move. And so, for all the work you do on this day, National Philanthropy Day, I want to say thank you for what you're doing. Even if you don't get the kudos and recognition you deserve, I'm in the position to be able to watch a lot of things, listen to a lot of things, and know who's doing what. I can tell you there's real work on the ground from our philanthropic community. I think I'll cut my comments short because let Johnny get into it, and you all want to get into it as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And the format tonight, it is styled as a fireside chat, but the chat is not just between me and the mayor. It's among us all in the room. So you have before you pens and paper, so if you have questions that you would like to address to the mayor, or me, but mostly to the mayor, please write them down, and Brittany there will take your questions, and we'll address them during the evening. And also we have some pre-submitted questions, so we have a few things to get the conversation going. But before we do the first question, I'd like to propose a rhetorical question and answer it. And the question is, Protective Life, you're sitting here, though I will say we are in unincorporated Jefferson County here. The city of Birmingham runs in front of us. Mountain Brook on one side, Vestavia on one side, and Homewood on the other side. So we're really not a part of any municipality. But the question is, why is Protective Life interested and so passionately interested in the betterment and the advancement, improvement, and prosperity of the city of Birmingham? And I will tell you that under the leadership of Eva Robertson, who heads our foundation, we contribute about $5 million a year, and mostly in this area, mostly Birmingham and the immediate environs. And here's the reason we do it. It is because we don't have a chance of being successful as a company unless this community is successful. In our business, the game is talent. It's recruiting the best and the brightest, getting them to live, move to, stay in Birmingham and be happy. And if we live in a divided community, or if we live in a community where prosperity is not shared more broadly around the community, if we live in an environment where crime and problems with youth and violence and all is just pervasive over the long haul, it's very hard to imagine how our company can be successful, how our people can be happy. And so we feel like we have a very deep need to invest in the broader community in Birmingham. And it's partly philanthropic. It's partly because doing good is good. You know, I mean, it's the right thing to do. There'll be a special place in heaven for us if we take care of the least of these, I'm sure. But also, we think it's an imperative for our company to be successful that we invest deeply. And that's why we have invested so deeply in so many not-for-profits, many of them in the city of Birmingham, in the neighborhoods that you live in and represent. So we just want to be clear as to where we're coming from. Mayor, let me start with the first question, which is, just tell us a little bit about your first, little over a year now as mayor. Almost a year. Tell us what you found. Tell us what you learned. Tell us what you've accomplished, and tell us what your vision is. Tell us where you want to take this great city. Is that too much of a question? Yes.
Did y'all hear that? All of that? That was like 10 questions in one. I want to make sure, can you all in the back, can y'all hear me? Okay. So, where do I start? November 28th, which is coming up in about 2 weeks, y'all. It'll be 1 year since I was actually sworn in. That's the 30th mayor of our city, and it's been a very humbling experience. I want to say this past July, I became part of a 40 mayor cohort for mayors all across the nation in this class called Bloomberg Harbor. It's all about, in my position and the other 39 mayors' positions, just because we're in a leadership position, we can't stop learning. Understanding our role, understanding what our mission is, and understanding how to be better leaders, more effective leaders. And it's amazing you come together with 39 of the mayors and 40 of us, regardless of our size, regardless if our area is all urban or rural or some suburbia, or if it's all black or all white, or if it's a Democrat, Republican, black or white, we face similar issues in regards to the role of a mayor. But a former mayor was speaking before all of us, and he was the mayor of a large city within the United States for 12 years. And he spoke about every time the camera or the microphone got in his face, or a reporter got in his face, the first 100 days of the first 6 months, he says, I'm building my team. He says, what have you accomplished? He says, I'm building my team. And then they asked him that right at his 1 year mark, what have you done? He said, I built my team. And I just thought, for that entire class I did, that's one of the things I've kept with me, because in this almost 1 year now, the thing I am most proud of, the thing that I hang my hat on in this position is, I've been in an opportunity to build my team. There's some folk in this room, and there's some folk not in this room, who collectively are a part of our administration. And that's important. Being a mayor is it's not an island sport. It's not a one-man band. There's nothing I can do on my own. And the team I've been able to put in place actually allows me to be able to sleep at night a minimum of 5 hours. It allows me to be in a space where I don't have to do everything, that I can share this vision of how do we build our community through servant leadership. This team I built allows me to say, here are our core values of customer service, efficiency, effectiveness, transparency, and accountability. And then they push those values. This team I put in place has allowed us as a team, as an administration, to be able to peel back the layers of all these issues, all these problems we inherited. And now everyone is on the solutions end of it. Instead of one brain with my isolated passion at the table, there's a collective group of people with a high amount of energy, a sense of urgency, but critical thinkers, but have the passion and the soft skills enough to add all that to how do we solve problems on behalf of the people we represent. And so that's it. That's a long way of saying, if you ask me one thing I've accomplished, is putting a team in place to actually address the issues that concern our citizens. And so what we inherited, y'all, was a hot mess. There's some folk in this room that may not know how government works. There's probably some folk in this room that know how government works at every level, federal level, state level, local level. And when it comes down to the local level, here is how I defined it. It's the non-sexy things. People want us to pave streets. But then you find that the street has a backlog of about $50 million worth of street paving. People want us to fill potholes. You find that there are thousands of potholes in our city. People want their sidewalks and curbs walkable. They want their playground and their rec center and their libraries to be functional. They want access to healthy food in proximity where they live. All those non-sexy things I just named at this exact same time are very critical to quality of life issues for the average resident. And so what I found, and what we inherited is, there hasn't been a laser-like focus on simple issues, what I call right at the heart of quality of life for our residents. And so the team in place now, we got a lot of big things we want to do. But I tell them every day, if we don't get the fundamentals down, the blocking and tackling of government, the basics, right first, you can't talk about the trick play of the Hail Mary of some big granular thing you want to do. Our citizens at the basic level need infrastructure needs satisfied. They need to feel safe on their own porch. Y'all have heard me say this over and over, but it's the same thing. I'll put it to you another way. We're coming up on 1 year. The month of November has been a critical time for us to be able to look back and say, what have we done right that we can continue to improve upon? And what have we done wrong that we should just totally stop because it's stupid and keep doing dumb stuff? And we call this halftime right now. And so then, November 29th, day one of year 2, our sophomore year, the question is, what will be your priority? It'll be the same priority it was for the first year, neighborhood revitalization. Because at the heart of what we're trying to do, believe it or not, my view is a little different from y'all's, but it's those things who we see here. Particularly this second one though, it says serve people. Everyone knows what we're doing is everywhere in our city, putting people first. Putting people first is really about serving our people, helping our people, improving their quality of life. Not sure if I answered all. I think there are 9 more questions.
I got plenty more.
But that's a gist of some things.
Thank you, Mayor. That was a very eloquent response to a complicated, convoluted question. But you know, I want to say that I am so proud and thankful that I can sit across this space from you and we can call each other friends. It means a lot to me that you consider me a friend. I certainly consider you a friend. And over the years, I've had the privilege and the pleasure of developing relationships with a lot of people in the city of Birmingham that I respect and think highly of. And I think that's been really supportive of our ability to engage through our foundation in other ways with the city of Birmingham and people in the city to try to be a constructive force. But really have a sense that we, the corporate community in the city, could do more. You know, that we tried and we've done a lot of great things over the years, but we really haven't done enough. That there's a lot of work to be done. But I think on the corporate side, there's a little frustration because we don't quite know how to connect. You know, we don't know quite how to build the bridges that we need. But let's just take one of your strategic priorities, which is probably the most critical one. I don't know, that's hard to say which is all important, but education, public education. You know, if we can't figure out how to ensure that kids that are coming out of Birmingham City schools do not have first class education, how can they compete? If they can't compete, how can we have a great community if our kids fail? So do you have any thoughts about what we as a corporate community can do, working with you and working with all the good people in the city to improve the quality? And really it's all about the kids, the competitiveness of the kids that come out of the school system in the city.
That's a really good question. Trying to figure out where to start. Let's start with some of the issues and problems first. I think everyone in this city knows that the city of Birmingham doesn't just face poverty. We face a massive amount of concentrated poverty that has a negative ripple on so many things as it relates to not just our youngest generation, but just everyday people in our city, whether it's crime, etc. Then I want to give you all a belief I have. And part of this belief is my tendency to actually always want to be a student and learn, benchmark best practices, what other cities are doing. And one of the things I try to find is, how do other cities move at a faster pace as it relates to progress than ours? One of the things I find on repeat in those cities is that three-legged stool I told you all about. So I believe the growth of a city is measured not just by what government does in one leg, one lane, but there are two other lanes, and that is in the private sector for profit. And then that's also in what I call the philanthropic lane, which includes foundations and nonprofits and your civic organizations, your faith-based communities, etc. When all three of those align, that city is on a very fast pace in regards to progress, quality of life issues, impact, measurables, etc. Birmingham in isolation, definitely with two of those, the private sector and the philanthropic sector, do very, very well. I think as a young administration, we now want to dance with those other two. But it takes alignment and it takes vision. So here's the deal. Let's make that practical, what I said. Let's bring it home. Birmingham, you got two things that are very weird to me. You got all this access to healthcare. You got all these hospitals and all this conversation around healthy options and healthy choice, and we have some of the most unhealthy people that live in our city. The only other thing that is another example that's that far apart is you literally have all this giving. I think Birmingham metro area is now at the point where, what is it now? With a minimum of $1 billion in totality of all the organizations in given a year. But we haven't made a dent in concentrated poverty. So that's just two worlds. What is that? We give. But have we seen the impact we want to see in your individual organizations or collectively all of our organizations? I think part of that is because vision, direction, and alignment hasn't necessarily been at the table together. So if you ask me to make that relate to education, here's what I find. You have a superintendent in place that's been at the helm for 18 months now. We've been in our position for almost 12 months now. She has a compelling vision and a strategic plan. I believe we have a compelling vision and a strategic plan that align. I think it's now time for us to be able to sit at a table with those other two legs, all those in place, and say, what direction do we want to go? How do we measure where we want to be? And then how do we collectively pool our resources towards addressing these issues. And so if you put that in education, I just think we do it wrong. I know this is a long answer, but it's a really important question. I did a TED talk last year, and I used building a house as an analogy. That this side of the home you're trying to build would be K through 5th. And I think the nonprofits, the state school system, all these organizations put millions into K through 5th. They put millions into 6 through 8 for that side, and roof ceiling 9 through 12. They put millions into it, and we don't necessarily invest in the foundation. I think we know what that's gonna get us. It's not solid ground. So we're just dumping resources into something that's not gonna work. So here's the solution end of what I propose. Corporate Birmingham, philanthropic Birmingham, we should put our attention and resources into 2 things. It's actually probably 3, but I want to focus on 2. We got to make early childhood work between birth and 5 years of age before they ever enter our system. And we should really talk about, we're going to call it the Fred Shuttlesworth Scholarship Opportunity, but it's really about putting our children on a trajectory to either enter apprenticeship/workforce or straight into a college or university when they finish high school. That takes alignment, that takes a serious focus, that takes putting all of our resources towards the beginning of their education, which would be that way, and when they walk across the stage that way.
Thank you, Mayor, and that's a very helpful answer because it does take a vision and it breaks it down into some concrete things that we can talk about, see what we can do. I want to shift gears and talk about something that's a little bit more big picture, but it's a project, and that's the World Games. The World Games are coming to Birmingham. As most of you, I'm sure, know, the World Games is kind of a subsidiary of the International Olympics. It's an aggregation of sports for different kinds of sports that want to be elevated one day to an Olympic sport. It is a huge international event, and it's televised all over the world. It's coming to Birmingham. Now, the World Games is obviously going to be a great opportunity to get some very positive publicity for this city. I will say that we protected, we're very proud that along with Regions and Alabama Powers and others, we're a lead sponsor, of the World Games. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about how the World Games can actually impact the neighborhoods, can actually improve the quality of life for the people in the city of Birmingham.
So right before I was sworn in last year, I had dinner with a group of folk over in Atlanta, Georgia, who they pretty much were the backbone to Maynard Jackson towards his last term. I think if you don't know what happened in Atlanta, he pretty much spearheaded a lot of what happened for Atlanta to get the 1996 Olympics. After they got it, which was, I guess, early 90s, and they actually planned for it, this dinner I had, all they talked about was what they were attempting to do to put in place, not necessarily for the games, but the impact the games would have once it was over for their city. Issues around affordable housing, this whole notion to take an area where they would have to develop for the games. But when the games were over, how could this area be used for the existing residents in that footprint? It was a very powerful conversation, y'all, because all you saw were people who were plotting in a very positive way that for Atlanta 96 to be put on display to the world meant something in this hand. But in this hand, post 96, when the Olympics were over, what was it going to mean for the growth of their city? And I'm trying to be short in this answer. And that's the gist of that dinner. We would probably need some drinks. cocktails or something to give you a longer version of it. Because I think we have a unique opportunity as it relates to the World Games, and I'm gonna give one example. I'm gonna give a different example. I gave you that dinner talked a lot about housing and community and neighborhood development. But I think in Birmingham, what we can have, you all are seeing the conversation around transit in our city. It hasn't been necessarily a healthy conversation. And then one minute you think you take a step forward in public transportation, and you literally take 10 steps backwards. In the next article you read about something else happening in the transit. But I believe between the bus rapid transit opportunity we have, I believe between this whole idea of entertaining what microtransit can be for our city, post 2021, which would be 3 years out, we can start to be in a space where we can actually have efficient transportation to get people from point A to point B. And as it relates to transportation, we want it to be efficient for our guests who are visiting in our city. But more importantly for me as mayor, I want efficient transportation for everyday people who need to get from point A to B, from work to home, from home to the doctor's office, from home to school, from school back to home. I think we have an amazing opportunity. If I just use that one example, what the World Games can produce for us is how to be a more efficient government. And that's kind of what Atlanta did in '96, that they took this as an opportunity to say, what can we do not only for our guests, but more importantly, what can we do for our residents? And I think for us, that's transportation.
Thank you. Mayor, I think we have some questions. Thank you. Okay. Mayor, you recently released the City of Birmingham Strategic Plan, which focuses on neighborhood revitalization, transparent government, education, workforce development, social justice. How is the city moving forward with that strategic plan?
I like the direction we're moving towards. Let me tell you how we got to the point of having those goals. Neighborhood revitalization is the #1 thing we're doing. We're gonna have that on repeat over and over. These other things we're trying to have alignment around, particularly social justice and others, is really at the heart at understanding what the city of Birmingham not only means to our residents, but what the city of Birmingham means to America and the world. What I found is people run for office, y'all, and the goal is to win. And then they win, and they spend 100% of their time in just a reactionary mode. So you just go with the win. Somebody complains about a pothole, you go fill that pothole. But you never take the time to say, hey, how many potholes in the city of Birmingham? Squeaky wheel, somebody complains about cutting lots, and you go cut the lot, but no one ever talks about how do we make the actual land bank work so the city can get out of the cutting lots and cutting grass business. So the whole idea of a strategic plan for actual municipal government is to actually have a sense of direction. Where are we going? How to measure, how to hold ourselves accountable, and how to actually make government work. And I think all the things we're trying to do, 1 year in, now having a strategic plan, we can spend the next 3 years executing on that. Ed Fields, he left at an intentional, opportune time. But he is the city's chief strategist, and he's one of my senior advisors, but he's running point on our strategic plan. And he's put a team in place to actually make sure we can measure what we're trying to do. They meet on a monthly basis, and it's literally to do a check-in. Where are we on these different things? Because there are so many things detailed embedded in the strategic plan. But we want to be able to lift up to the community. These are our priorities. Here's what's embedded in those priorities. Here's how we fund and allocate resources towards those priorities and measure progress towards solving the problems and all those things. maybe at 30 days since we released it, so we have a long way to go. But it's one of the things I'm actually happy about when I say I got a team in place, because different team members are responsible for different parts of that strategic plan. But that strategic plan is important, y'all, because the goal 3 years from now is to be able to look this community in the face and say, I not only want to thank you for the opportunity you give me to serve and be our mayor, but these are the things you talked about when I knocked on your door and you said you wanted to see accomplished. This is what we've been able to do towards them.
Thank you. Mayor, one thing I figured out about you early on when I first met you, when you were a young man, before you became mayor, you were just a child, really, each other, is that you had this amazing blend of qualities, which I very seldom see in business people. I don't know I've seen much of it among people that enter the political fray, but you're able to blend a very inspirational vision, you know, for where you want to be, you know, what you can see out on the horizon, along with a very practical sense of what you have to do to get there. I think it was Albert Einstein who said that vision without execution is hallucination. Pardon?
That's probably true.
True, yeah. But moving more toward the emotional and the inspirational side of the equation. This probably should be our last question because it's just about 7 o'clock, and we promised we would have you out by then. This is a very, very good question, and what's really good about this question comes right after Veterans Day. Of course, you know, celebrating our armed forces and the sacrifices they've made over time, and you know, their patriotism and their love of country is really what Veterans Day is all about. And it's really what makes a great country. But I think it's true of a great city. I think it's what people are willing to do, to stand up for the city, to make it better. And here's the question. It may not be a good answer to this one. I'm sorry to throw you in like this, but it's a great question. It says, what should we individually, every one of us, be willing to do, even sacrifice from our personal life for the well-being of our community? What advice can you give us as citizens of this greater community as to what you would like to see us do in order to help you achieve your vision for a greater, more prosperous community where the prosperity is shared more equally?
That is a really, really good question. I found this almost last year to find some type of emotional balance, not to get too caught up in the praise when someone's all in your face saying you're doing such an amazing job. At the exact same time, not to get too low when folks are jabbing at you, telling you how awful of a mayor you are. That balance is important because what I find is so many different walks of life in our city. And there's so many different needs, so many different wants, so many different issues and ways people go about expressing what their individual issue is or what they want from government. And what I tell people, what I would like to tell people, kind of goes back to what my mom and great grandmother told me growing up. You are in a position, each of you individually, to do whatever you want. You have that power. And many times when we see things, we don't like how they're going. In the school system, my response is, if you're a product of the system, you should go back to that individual elementary school you walk the halls, or that middle school you walk the same halls that the children currently walk at that high school. And you will be amazed at just walking those halls where you were a former student, or you live in a neighborhood of a school that you did attend, but you see what's going on in the system. You have power to make a difference in an individual child's life in the classroom. You have the power to make a difference in that classroom. You have the power to make a difference in that grade. You have the power to make a difference in that school. It will be the same for an issue in your neighborhood where You see an issue, you want something done about it. You got the power to get involved at the local level. It doesn't have to be organized through your neighborhood association. You can go cut the lot yourself with your own lawnmower. I promise you, our Birmingham police are not going to arrest you. They're not going to arrest you. I think people should be encouraged from all the negativity out here. I believe there is more goodwill in our city than there is bad. I also believe there are more solutions than there are problems. And we need more people to be on the solutions end of addressing all the ills of our community. I think the power of being able to have this conversation with y'all on Philanthropy Day, I want to give you some backdrop. I don't think I even used the word philanthropy before 2003. So in 2003, I graduated from college. I knew what helping people was, and I knew what giving was, but I didn't understand what philanthropy is, the power of philanthropy. And then I stumbled upon an organization that I became a member of in 2004 called the Birmingham Change Fund, BCF. And there's several people in this room I met. I met Ed Fields. I met Zandra Jones. I met this Dallas Cowboy fan right here. Good to see you, young brother. But the power of that organization, the small organization, y'all, about the importance of giving back, investing in the African American community, investing in Black people. What does it mean to invest your time, your talent, and your treasure? And from then, everything made sense to me in regards to how to be intentional about your time, how to be intentional with your treasure, how to be intentional with your talent, and giving back and trying to make an impact and a difference. And I've kept that with me for the last 15 years. And so, there's a lot of words in answering that question, but here's the short of it. Each of you have the time to make a difference in your community. Each of you all outside of your professional space has a unique talent that you can share with your community. And each of you, it doesn't matter the amount of the treasure, have enough resources to make a difference in your community. And I think all of that collectively, from each individual, allows us to have a massive positive ripple on whatever we want to see, whatever we want to change for the better in our community.
Mayor Randall Woodfin, you make us all proud. Thank you, sir.